Long summary of the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, audio by Paper to Audio. We argue that the concealment of intentions is a foundational skill in the pursuit of power, requiring a disciplined approach to behavior and communication. By keeping others in the dark about our true objectives, we ensure they remain unable to mount an effective defense, effectively guiding them along false paths until it is too late for them to react. This strategy relies on our ability to project a bland and unassuming exterior that disarms potential adversaries, making us appear harmless or even indecisive, while we carefully plan our next moves in private. We emphasize that people are fundamentally creatures of habit who crave familiarity, so by appearing to be what they expect, we can easily cloak our ulterior motives and keep our real goals shielded from public view. To achieve this, we utilize decoys, red herrings, and elaborate smoke screens that occupy the attention of our rivals while we maneuver toward our desired outcome. For example, we might adopt a cause we actually despise or feign indifference toward an object of intense desire, causing our enemies to miscalculate our strengths and weaknesses. This art of indirection allows us to appear open and trustworthy even as we act with extreme cunning, ensuring that our targets remain off balance and unable to distinguish the genuine from the false. We maintain that it is safer to be perceived as someone who is entirely predictable than to be seen as a threat, as respect and fear are not reserved for those who are easily read. We also demonstrate that false sincerity is one of the most effective tools in our arsenal, as people are inherently inclined to trust appearances. By espousing belief in honesty and uprightness publicly, we create an aura of integrity that makes our deceptions that much harder to spot. We caution that this tactic must be handled with precision, as overacting or appearing overpassionate will inevitably raise suspicions. Ultimately, the successful strategist knows that it is not about closing oneself off from the world, but about talking endlessly about desires that are not one's own, thereby lulling others into a state of false security while we continue to work beneath the surface. We contend that putting too much trust in friends is a profound error in the exercise of power, as friends are often more prone to envy and betrayal than former enemies. When we hire or promote a friend, we risk unbalancing the dynamic of our professional relationship, as the favor granted can create an oppressive sense of obligation that leads to resentment. We observe that people often forget the favors they have received, imagining they earned their success through their own merits, and this ingratitude can manifest in small, damaging acts of dishonesty or disloyalty. We advise keeping friendships personal and reserving professional environments for the truly skilled, as keeping a clear distance is essential for maintaining control and objectivity. Conversely, we find that former enemies can be far more valuable assets, as they have much more to prove and are often highly motivated to demonstrate their loyalty to the person who has pardoned them. When we turn an enemy into a friend, we not only eliminate a threat, but also gain a dedicated follower who sees our generosity as a lifeline. We point to historical examples of leaders who broke the cycle of violent coups by offering their potential rivals secure estates and noble status, effectively emasculating them while appearing magnanimous. This approach transforms a pack of wolves into docile lambs, ensuring that our authority is not constantly challenged by those closest to us. Ultimately, we recommend embracing conflict rather than avoiding it, as an enemy at our heels keeps us focused and alert, preventing the stagnation that often follows unchecked success. We encourage creating a clear, defined struggle, as this provides a compelling argument for our cause that all the words in the world could not match. By using enemies to enhance our reputation as sure-footed fighters who can be relied upon, we avoid the laziness and lethargy that plague those who lack opposition. While we acknowledge that there are times when a friend might be useful as a scapegoat, we insist that the primary rule of power is to never let our personal feelings contaminate our strategic assessments of the people around us. We emphasize that the most dangerous mistake a person can make in the pursuit of power is to accidentally outshine their superior, as those in positions of authority are inherently insecure and easily threatened by talent. When we display our gifts too openly, we risk inspiring fear rather than admiration, potentially leading the master to replace us with someone less competent and less threatening. We have observed that many favorites fell from power simply because they presumed too much upon the master's affection, forgetting that their status was entirely dependent on those above them. Even if we have more wit, intelligence, or charm, we must learn to disguise these traits, making it appear that our ideas are merely an echo of the master's own wisdom. We provide strategies for discreetly flattering superiors, such as appearing naive or committing harmless mistakes that give the master a chance to offer advice. By making the master feel superior, we satisfy their vanity and gain their favor, which provides a far more stable foundation for our own advancement than any display of individual brilliance. We note that historical figures who failed to master this delicate dance often met ruin, as their brilliance made the ruler feel insecure about their own place in the sun. We must act as the sky behind the sun, finding ways to heighten our master's radiance while remaining in the background ourselves, as this is the surest way to attain the heights of power without being crushed by the weight of authority. We advise that one should be selectively cruel, only outshining the master if they are a falling star who can no longer defend their position. If our superior is already weak and ready to fail, it is sometimes better to hasten their downfall than to remain tied to their sinking ship. However, we stress the importance of patience and planning, as it is the natural course of things that power eventually fades. By waiting for the right moment and using our skills to make the master shine in the eyes of others, we ensure that when they eventually fall, we are the ones best positioned to inherit their mantle. We have found that excessive speech is a significant barrier to power, as the more we say, the more common we appear and the less in control of our own image. Powerful people intimidate others by saying less, leaving their intentions veiled and their meaning open to interpretation, which makes them seem profound and mysterious. In our experience, silence puts others on the defensive, forcing them to fill the void with comments that inadvertently reveal their own weaknesses and motivations. We have seen how verbose individuals often dig their own graves by uttering foolish comments that come back to haunt them, proving that the tongue is a beast that must be mastered if one wishes to rise in the social and professional order. We argue that even banalities can seem original if they are delivered in a vague, sphinx-like manner that leaves others guessing. When we control our words, we force others to interpret our thoughts, and humans are machines of interpretation that will inevitably project their own insecurities onto our silence. By being brief, we avoid the trap of being easily understood or dismissed, keeping potential rivals off balance while we maintain our aura of mystery. We recount the history of rulers who used sparse communication to enhance their majesty, knowing that every word uttered by a person of power carries immense weight, and therefore should never be squandered or given away for free. We acknowledge that there are specific situations where talking might be a distraction technique, particularly when we are hiding a deception, but we caution that such use of words requires a high degree of skill. Generally, we recommend practicing restraint, as once a statement is made, it cannot be reclaimed, and the risk of saying something dangerous far outweighs the momentary satisfaction of a biting comment. By learning the art of the oracle, we gain a reputation for wisdom and foresight that our chatterbox competitors can never achieve. In the end, it is our quiet control that commands the greatest respect, not our ability to dominate a conversation. We maintain that reputation is the cornerstone of all power, serving as a primary defense that can intimidate and win influence before we ever utter a word. Once a reputation is damaged, we become vulnerable to constant attack from all sides, and reclaiming a sullied name is an arduous, if not impossible, process. We urge everyone to make their reputation unassailable by being alert to potential threats and thwarting them before they can take hold. We also suggest that we can enhance our own position by subtly opening holes in the reputations of our enemies, standing aside and letting public opinion destroy them for us, which is far more efficient than engaging in direct combat. We note that human society is inherently superficial and judges people primarily on appearances, making our public image a vital barometer of our success. Because people prefer to believe what they can see rather than what they are told, we must curate our image to convey a single outstanding quality, such as generosity, honesty, or cunning. This creates a calling card that precedes us, paving the way for our actions and exaggerating our strengths without the need for constant effort. We warn against appearing overly defensive or insecure, as anger at slander only confirms the suspicions of others and highlights the very weakness we seek to hide. maintaining the high road is almost always more effective. Finally, we suggest that if one's reputation is already tainted, the best approach is to associate with someone whose image is pristine, using their good name to whitewash our own. We have seen that the robber barons of history could only soften their image by becoming art collectors, as the association with beauty and culture provided a necessary mask for their past deeds. A reputation is a treasure to be carefully hoarded, as it is the magic wand that doubles our strength. Since we must live among others, we can never afford to be indifferent to how we are perceived, for being the master of our reputation is being the master of our fate. We assert that standing out is essential to power, as everything in social life is judged by its appearance, and what is unseen effectively ceases to exist. We must avoid at all costs the trap of being lost in the crowd or buried in oblivion, making ourselves magnets of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, and more mysterious than the masses. We emphasize that we should make no distinction between kinds of attention, as even notoriety can be a vehicle for power, provided we manage it correctly. It is better to be slandered and attacked by the public than to be ignored, as at least we are in the limelight. We advocate surrounding our names with the sensational and the scandalous, as any kind of curiosity will serve our purposes in creating a following. When we do something odd, we gather a crowd, and once we have their eyes on us, we have a platform from which to operate. We advise that we should never be afraid of controversy, as it separates us from the mediocrity surrounding us and provides an opportunity to test our influence. We remind readers that people crave larger-than-life figures, and if we can fulfill this craving, we will be cherished and feared in equal measure. We insist that the moment we allow ourselves to fade into the background, we forfeit our position of strength. Lastly, we advise the cultivation of mystery to heighten our presence, as in an increasingly banal world, enigmas instantly draw the gaze of others. By being unpredictable and slightly odd, we keep people in a state of anticipation, constantly watching for our next move. We suggest changing our style, being contradictory, or simply withholding information, all of which forces others to think about us and try to define us. Since what cannot be grasped cannot be consumed, we maintain that mystery is the ultimate defense against those who wish to reduce us to a simple formula. In short, shine brightly, keep them guessing, and never ever be boring. We believe that the most effective leaders conserve their own forces and energy by leveraging the wisdom, knowledge, and legwork of others to further their own causes. This strategy not only saves precious time, but also creates a godlike aura of speed and efficiency that surrounds our efforts. We warn against the pride of believing we must do everything ourselves, as this is a recipe for exhaustion and burnout, and will leave us vulnerable to those vultures waiting to steal the credit for our work. It is far more powerful to be the director of operations than the laborer, as those who create are easily replaced, but those who orchestrate remain at the helm. We provide examples of successful figures who established vast production lines, hiring talented individuals to specialize in different areas while they oversaw the final result. By keeping the inner workings of our projects hidden and by presenting the finished masterpiece, we maintain a sense of exclusive genius that intimidates our competitors. We advocate standing on the shoulders of giants, using the vast storehouse of knowledge and history to look like a prodigy, even when we are merely a clever borrower. If we try to do it all on our own, we will be easily overlooked and eventually cast aside when someone faster or younger comes along. Finally, we suggest that this approach is available to everyone, as the secret is simply knowing who has the skills we lack and how to secure them for our own purposes. If we must spend time on a project, let it be on the orchestration of talent, not the grunt work. We acknowledge that it is vital to keep our methods quiet until we have secured our position, as we do not want rivals figuring out our tricks. In the end, the credit for a discovery is often more important than the discovery itself, and it is our responsibility to ensure that our name is the one that is forever linked to our achievements. We argue that forcing your opponent to act is a primary mechanism of control, as it places you in the driver's seat while your rival is left to navigate the terrain you have prepared. It is always better to wait, keep your calm, and let others come to you, as this consumes their energy and frustrates their plans. When you bait your enemies with prospects of gain, You make them abandon their original goals and walk straight into your trap. We maintain that the essence of power is the ability to keep the initiative, ensuring that it is your moves that are being reacted to, not the other way around. We advise that the powerful should master their emotions and never allow anger to dictate their strategy, as people who are pushed and baited will often reveal their own rashness. By setting up the right trap and patiently waiting for the victim to take the bait, we ensure that they expend their energy on the journey, leaving them exhausted and on the defensive when they arrive in our territory. We warn that aggressive action is often mistaken for effective action, but that the truly effective strategist knows that pacing and timing are far more important than a rash, short-lived victory. We emphasize that this approach creates the illusion that the other party is in control, which is the perfect deception. When people think they are choosing to come to you, they feel empowered, which makes them that much more vulnerable to your influence. You do not need to bully them. You simply create a compelling reason for them to act in a way that serves your interests. By making yourself the destination and the source of the rewards they crave, you force their hand without ever appearing to touch them, and that is the height of subtlety and power. We maintain that verbal argument is an inherently Pyrrhic victory, as the resentment and ill will it stirs up almost always outlasts any temporary change of opinion. In our experience, people are rarely swayed by logic or eloquence, as they are emotionally attached to their own beliefs and will fight to defend them regardless of the facts. Instead of wasting time in pointless debate, we recommend demonstrating the truth through action, as a visible demonstration leaves no room for counterargument or emotional misinterpretation. A silent, successful outcome is far more persuasive than an hour of passionate rhetoric. We suggest that if your ideas are correct, the evidence of their effectiveness will convince even the most stubborn opponents. When you demonstrate your point, you avoid offending anyone's intelligence or vanity, which is the inevitable result of an argument where one person must lose face. By allowing others to see for themselves the truth of your claims, you make them feel that they have reached the correct conclusion on their own, rather than having been forced into it by your superior verbal gymnastics. This approach is much more diplomatic and preserves your professional relationships while achieving your stated goals. We note that symbols and visual proof are particularly effective because they communicate instantly and transcend language and education levels. A simple, elegant gesture can carry more weight than an entire treatise, as it resonates on an emotional level that argument can never hope to reach. We advise saving your energy for action and walking away from those who insist on debating for the sake of winning. True power is found in getting what you want without the baggage of bruised egos, as a master player knows that silence and accomplishment are the ultimate tools of persuasion. We warn that emotional states, unhappiness and misfortune are highly infectious, and that associating with those who constantly suffer from self-inflicted disasters will inevitably drag you down. While it is natural to want to help the drowning man, we caution that trying to do so often results only in our own downfall. We observe that people who are pathologically unhappy possess a powerful influence, as their intensity can overwhelm our reason and make us lose our sense of proportion. It is not our duty to be the therapist for the chronically miserable, as their patterns are often deeply ingrained and will likely prove resistant to our best intentions. We recommend quarantining ourselves from such individuals as soon as their behavior reveals itself, for the time and energy lost in trying to save them are resources we can never reclaim. We argue that your reputation is also at stake, as you will be judged by the company you keep. If your circle is full of unstable, disgruntled, or unsuccessful people, it will reflect poorly on your own character and limit your professional opportunities. We emphasize that there are plenty of happy and fortunate people who bring with them a positive energy that can infect you just as easily, and we strongly suggest gravitation toward these types to share in their prosperity. Finally, we suggest practicing this law as a rule of life. Look for the positive affinity in your associates, not just for cheer, but for the habits of mind that lead to success and stability. If you are naturally gloomy or prone to isolation, seek out those who are gregarious and buoyant, and allow yourself to soak up their ways of thinking and acting. We firmly believe that this is more effective than any therapy, as it creates an automatic shift in your internal rhythm. By consciously choosing your environment and your influences, you control the emotional weather of your life, ensuring that you remain positioned for greatness rather than mired in others' misfortunes. We assert that the ultimate form of power is not independence, but rather the ability to make others fundamentally dependent on you for their happiness and prosperity. If you are needed and wanted, you enjoy a degree of freedom that no amount of wealth or social standing could buy, as your presence becomes a necessity for those around you. We caution against teaching your masters or subordinates so much that they can function without you, as this would pave the way for them to cast you aside at the first opportunity. You must remain the exclusive source of the value you provide, ensuring your own survival while making others tether their fate to your own. We have observed throughout history that those who fail to make themselves indispensable are eventually replaced, often by those who are cheaper or more compliant. To prevent this, you must intertwine your success with theirs so that any effort to eliminate you would bring about a collapse of the system they have built. We recommend becoming the strategist, the intelligence officer, or the essential right hand who knows where the bodies are buried. By being the backbone of the organization, you ensure that no one can afford to let you go, which in turn grants you the freedom to move as you please without being a lackey. We also suggest that while this dependence makes you powerful, it does not mean your masters will love you, and in fact they may fear and resent you. We argue that this is perfectly acceptable, as being feared provides a much more stable foundation for power than relying on the fickle, changing emotions of affection or friendship. You have everything you need when others are terrified of losing you, as fear is something you can manage and control. Make your skills so unique that cutting you loose would be a disaster, and you will effectively be the master of the very people who think they have hired you. We advocate the strategic use of honesty and generosity, not as virtues for their own sake, but as instruments to disarm the suspicions of others and clear the way for manipulation. A single act of genuine seeming kindness or an unexpected admission of a minor truth can establish a reputation for integrity that masks dozens of deceptive acts. We find that people are easily distracted by an open-hearted gesture, as it lowers their guard and makes them feel special, effectively turning them into children who are eager to believe in our goodness. Once this hole is opened in their armor, we can guide them in whatever direction we choose. We suggest that honesty is a blunt tool, but one that can be honed into a precision instrument when used selectively. We advise establishing a reputation for honesty early in a relationship or a career, as once someone trusts you, they rarely look back to see if that trust is still earned. We also stress the power of the Trojan horse, the gift that appears disinterested but actually carries hidden advantages. By giving before we take, we shift the playing field, making it difficult for others to deny us when the time comes to ask for our own interests, as they are now under the spell of our apparent benevolence. Finally, we warn that this must be practiced with caution and absolute sincerity in appearance, or the mask will slip and we will be branded as hypocrites. If we are caught in a lie, the best defense is not an excuse, but a counterattack using more confidence or a fresh, bold lie. We must always be ready to play the rogue if our reputation for honesty becomes a liability, for the master strategist is never tied to one method. The objective is to keep our victims distracted and charmed until the final moment of our goal, using kindness as the ultimate smoke screen for our cunning. We insist that whenever you find yourself in the position of needing assistance, you must appeal exclusively to the self-interest of your target, never to their sense of mercy, gratitude, or friendship. People are preoccupied with their own concerns, and any appeal to past favors or shared sentiment is likely to be ignored or seen as a burden. By uncovering something in your request that promises them clear gain, status, or security, you make yourself an ally they cannot afford to ignore. We have found that pragmatic appeals are the only language that the powerful and the practical speak with any genuine intensity. We have seen countless individuals meet with disaster because they naively believed that the nobility of their cause or the weight of their past service would guarantee success. History is littered with the corpses of those who thought that justice was its own reward. We maintain that one must discard such illusions and look at every interaction through the lens of transaction. If you make it clear that your success will promote theirs, You turn a potential refusal into an enthusiastic response, as no one can resist an opportunity to advance their own standing. The key is to emphasize this benefit out of all proportion, making it the central feature of your plea. Finally, we advise studying the psychology of those from whom you seek help. Does the person crave recognition? Do they need to settle an old score? Are they financially insecure? Once you identify their primary need, you can tailor your request so that granting it fulfills their craving. By aligning your cause with theirs, you become part of their own narrative of success, ensuring they will work tirelessly on your behalf. Never ask for charity when you can create a business proposition, as the latter creates a bond of necessity that is far stronger and more reliable than the fragile thread of goodwill. We argue that information is the ultimate form of leverage, and that one must be active and artful in gathering the intelligence necessary to stay ahead of rivals. While the common method is to hire others, we suggest that playing the spy yourself in social settings is far more effective and less likely to backfire. By posing as a friend, we can listen more, talk less, and probe gently to discover the weaknesses and secrets of others, all while maintaining a mask of innocent interest. There is no social occasion, no casual conversation, that cannot be transformed into an opportunity for intelligence gathering if we are disciplined and observant. We maintain that most people are quite happy to talk about themselves if we provide the right environment, and their need to confide in us will lead them to divulge details about their true intentions, hidden fears, and internal conflicts. We suggest using false sincerity to draw them out, perhaps sharing a small secret of our own to create the illusion of vulnerability. This reciprocal openness makes them feel that they are bonding with us, so they never suspect that we are actually building a file on them. We remind you that a clear picture of an opponent is worth 10 times more than the finest sword in your armory, as it allows you to anticipate their moves before they make them. Finally, we warn that we must keep our own secrets under lock and key, and use misinformation to feed our opponents if we suspect they are trying to do the same to us. By planting fake intelligence with a chatterbox or a suspected spy, we can steer our rivals in the wrong direction, making them believe we are weaker or different than we truly are. The art of spying is not just about learning secrets. It is about controlling the narrative and ensuring that the information others have about us is exactly what we want them to believe. Mastery in this area provides a godlike vantage point from which we can orchestrate events with precision and foresight. We insist that when you are forced to contend with an enemy, you must crush them completely, leaving no ember alight that could eventually grow into a fire of revenge. We have learned from history that halting halfway out of mercy or the hope of reconciliation is a lethal mistake, as a wounded viper will only gain strength and bitterness while it waits for an opportunity to strike back. Our power must be absolute in its finality. We must show no room for debate, no space for the enemy to harbor hopes of a resurgence. Total annihilation is not just a military goal, but a necessary psychological step in securing our position. We advocate not only the physical defeat of an opponent, but also the destruction of their spirit. We must make it clear that resistance is futile and that their cause is lost forever. By showing the world that you are not a leader who stops until the goal is secured, you earn respect and discourage others from challenging your authority in the future. We advise against leaving any potential leader of a rebellion alive, as they will always be a magnet for the discontented, no matter how dimly their influence seems to smolder. Peace between you and your enemy is a dangerous fantasy. There is only victory or ruin. Lastly, we acknowledge that this can be a harsh and exacting course, but we maintain that it is the only way to ensure your own security and the longevity of your achievements. History is full of great empires that crumbled because they failed to finish their adversaries, eventually falling to the very people they had initially defeated. We maintain that it is better to be feared for your total commitment to victory than to be loved for your transient, misplaced mercy. Once you have made an enemy, you are locked in a contest that only one can win. Ensure that it is you, and that you win completely. We argue that too much circulation makes one's value decrease, as familiarity breeds contempt and makes us appear common. We advise that if we have established a strong presence in a group, we should learn to withdraw temporarily, creating a sense of scarcity that makes others crave our return. By leaving when the time is right, we create a void that reminds people of our worth, effectively increasing our respect and honor. Absence is a powerful tool to inflate one's reputation, as the human imagination will work in our favor once we are gone, turning our flaws into virtues and our memories into legends. We warn against the danger of overstaying our welcome, as there is always a point where too much presence creates irritation. We must cultivate the art of the exit, stepping away before the audience becomes restless. This is not to say that we should remain isolated, but rather that we should be selectively present. When we return after an absence, we do so with a renewed sense of purpose and freshness, which revitalizes our position and makes us appear as if we have just come back from a place of great accomplishment. Scarcity is a core principle of value, and applying it to ourselves ensures that we never become part of the background furniture. Ultimately, we recommend that you view your presence as a commodity that should be rationed for maximum effect. By keeping others in a state of waiting, you keep your value high and your position secure. We observe that even the most talented individuals can fall from grace if they are always available and never seem to have anything better to do. By maintaining a certain distance, you avoid the indignity of being taken for granted and ensure that whenever you do appear, your presence is an event, not a habit. In this way, you ensure that respect follows you even when you are out of sight. We maintain that keeping others in suspended terror through the cultivation of unpredictability is a potent strategy for maintaining the upper hand. Humans are driven by an insatiable need for patterns and familiarity, and they will naturally try to read your character to gain a sense of control over your actions. By deliberately violating their expectations and acting without a clear or consistent purpose, you put them off balance, causing them to wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. We have seen how this keeps enemies in a state of perpetual anxiety, forcing them to wait for the next strike and making them react to you, rather than the other way around. We argue that consistency is for the subordinate, who must be reliable to be trusted. The person of power, however, thrives on the confusion caused by erratic behavior. We recommend appearing whimsical or even irrational at times, as this prevents people from mapping out your strategy. By the time they believe they have your measure, you have already shifted your behavior, turning their supposed insight into an obstacle. We contend that this strategy should be taken to the extreme when necessary, as it can be used to intimidate, terrify, and ultimately paralyze those who might otherwise be your rivals. It is a psychological assault that leaves them unable to plan or organize against you. Finally, we suggest that this approach is particularly effective when you have been trapped in a situation that is turning against you. By shaking up the routine and forcing those around you to question their assumptions, you scramble the playing field and create new opportunities to assert your will. We warn that this should not be practiced to the point of being labeled insane, as that could undermine your standing in the long run. Use unpredictability as a surgical tool, sharp, sudden, and calculated to cause maximum distraction. Once you have regained the initiative, you can return to a more stable posture, but the impression you have left will remain, keeping others cautious and wary of your next sudden turn.